We're going to build a fully working contact form with live validation, a loading button, a toast success message. So now let's see how it's done. So right now, when I click on send message without any input, I get an error to fill in the name and all that. So when I fill that in and put the message, I click, I get a success message right here, like get a toast message. So now let's go through how that is. So now this button right here has two states. As you can see, it has a normal state where you see send message, but when I click, you see a sending before you see a reply. So whichever way, if these fields are not filled and I click on this button, you see a sending, then it sends back a reply to check if it's correct or not. So by default, the loading state is false, so the user sees send message. When the form is submitted, we switch the loading state. As you can see, we switch, and by default the loading state is false, but if the loading state is true, then it shows a success message toast over here. So how this form is going to be made is that when the user clicks submit, the loading state comes through, then a request is sent to Laravel. Then Laravel processes that request, returns it with a success message or an error. So when a return message is sent, Alpha picks that up and shows the toast. Alpha only picks that up if it's a success message. So let's move straight up and see how that works out. So I'm going to show you guys how we work this out step by step. So right now saving this, and I'm clearing everything so we can walk through it step by step. So first we have to put in our vites, our tailwind, then we do npm run dev so that tailwind styles can work on our form. Then we don't forget to install our find.js, because we will be using our find.js for the real-time feedback, like the success message. So let's go over to it. We will skip the toast and the the loading stage for now and head direct to the form and how we got that done. So in our form right here, we have our form, then our CSRF. If you have been following the playlists, I've talked about CSRF. So now we have a name field. So I'll uncomment this so that we can see it. So we have a name field. So right here, this is our name field. So now in our name field, it's an input and is a type of text because it's where the name of whoever is writing to you is going to put in his name. Then the value, as you can see, we have a new thing right here. This value which contains the old name is going to contain the input of the user when the page reloads. So this makes sure that whatever the user inputs remains in that input once the page has been reloaded. So we will go right to it later, and so you can see how it works. Then our classes and all that. Then our error message. Our error message, I've talked about this also in our former class, but I will go over it again. So this is a Laravel error directive at error. So we are linking the input, the name of the input, to the error directive, so that whenever an error happens to this particular input, it will be injected into this at message. So whatever error happens in this input right here, it will be spat out here. So let's go over to our email and comments that. Go over to our email, comment it, save. Same things for our email. You can see we have a name for this input and this email, and is a type email, so that no other kind of text without a at gmail.com can be able to pass through this input. So that's why the type is set to email. So the value also is retained. So we are retaining the value also in this input, so that whenever the page reloads, the user can see what he imputed in case of an error. So this is actually user friendly. So we have the error as well. So whatever error happens in this input will be injected out as a message. So the style of error message we are using for this contact form is that whenever an error happens, the border of the input will turn red. So that is why we have a focus outline to be none as default, then focus ring 2, then focus ring blue 400. So at error, so whenever an error happens, it grabs that input name that is at error, and the input right here is email. So we put in the email, then the focus will turn to red. As you can see, the focus now we have an at input and end error. We have at error and end error. So inside here now is what is defining how this input box will react to an error message. So we are saying, okay, if there is an error in this email input, turn the border to red and focus ring to red 400. So this is a Tailwind style of is actually a Tailwind styling. So we will see how all those work soon enough. So let's move over to our message field on comment that, then save. We have the same thing here. We are using a text area because it actually contains series of text from the user. So right now we are still using the same form of Tailwind styling to style the borders of our input whenever there is an error. We are also retaining the message from the user when the page reloads, and also we are also spitting out the error exactly too. So we are not just styling the input borders, but we are also trying to tell the user what exactly is happening. So this is what the Laravel error directive is going to handle for us. So now where our main focus is going to be is on the button state. So on comments that, save, and now we can see. So at initial, if you can actually read it plainly here. So we are doing okay. span X show. We're using Alpha JS here. If you can notice, we have Alpha JS has appeared in the picture. So alpha is okay. X show is equals to not loading. If it's not loading, if the page is not loading, if you are not loading the form, that is, if you have not clicked on submit or anything, let our message on the button be send message. But whenever you click on the button, no matter what, it shows, it means it's loading. So what you will see is sending. So whatever returns to you is the result of what has happened behind the scenes. So let's go over to how this works actually, because we know that only this cannot actually do anything. Actually, only having this now won't won't really do so much for you. So right now, let's see why when we click, we actually see sending and it returns a result. And actually here, we know that the result is an error because we have no input. So how did that happen? So let's go over to the beginning of our blade file. Then I have labeled it as, so this is the main alpha wrapper for toast plus loading state. So right now, this is our loading state, and our loading state is wrapped inside the whole the whole form. So our form is actually inside the loading state. So this x data, so this x data right here is where all our state lives. Think of it as a small front end store. So we define the loading state here so it can be accessed anywhere inside the block, including our send message button. So right now, so what's the most important thing right now? The most important thing right now is that this wrapper has to be outside the form, because you need both the button and the success message to have access to what is actually happening, if the form is loading or not. So we need this to be wrapping everything we have to access this. So right now in our X data, we are having the loading as false defaultly, because we don't want the form to load by itself or whatever. So defaultly our loading state is false. It's not loading on default. So when do we show the toast message? We saw a toast message when there is a success message, and with Laravel our success message is stored in the session. So if I take you back to our form controller, we have return back with success. So we are returning our validated form already. This is our validated input. So we are returning back a success message, and this success message is stored in the section. So now here our loading state will check on the section and check if there's a success message in the section. If there's a success message in the session, it returns true. If not, it returns false. That is what this line means here. So our toast message now will only show if the success if the session returns a success message. So I don't know if you understand vividly. So let me go through that again. When the form is submitted, we set loading to true. when the form is not submitted, is defaultly false. So now we are saying show the toast only if there's a session containing a success message. So we are saying, okay, show toast if session success is true, and don't show if session success is false. So we are not assigning toast message to session success. So now how will the toast notification actually work? Because this alone cannot do it. We are only right here, we are only defining what our loading state is, what our show toast is, and what our toast message is. So right here is when you will define what actually happens. So now we are saying let x show be equals to show toast. And what is show toast? Show toast is when there is a success message in the section. So right now we are now styling how we want that success message to show. So right now we're saying transform is out. So you are saying okay, the duration of the is out should be 300, that is 3 seconds. This is the styling, this is the styling. So we are now saying okay, x init. So another most important something is here. So we are saying okay, if there is a show toast, set a timeout where show toast will be false in 3 seconds. So when eventually there's a success message in your session, we are saying okay, I want this success message to be false in the next 3 seconds. That is, that success message should disappear in 3 seconds. So let's see if that worked actually. So let's do it. See, I am well. Send. Okay, I did uncomment this. So let's uncomment it so we can be able to see. How it works actually. So let's go again. So one is one. So now we see 1, 2, 3. Actually, it disappeared within 3 seconds. So I hope now you understand what this means. What this means now that I explained. So actually, that said, so why does our loading state and why does our loading state actually works? Our loading state actually works because after we have defined it as a parent div, we assigned it to the form. You have to define and you have to assign. So now we assigned x data now to the form, and we are saying okay, x data now is equals to the loading false, but on submit, what is this at submit? Let's quickly see what this at submit means. This at submit is okay when I submit. Once I click submit right here, we define a type here to be submit. So we are saying okay, when submit is called upon or when submit is clicked, let the loading state be true. So what happens when the loading state is true? If the loading state is true, where so here we said let loading state true. So if loading state is true, we are saying okay, show me sending, because we defined here that x show equals to loading, the text should be sending. if it's not loading, the text should be send message. So our is not loading is defined as false. That is a default. But our is loading is defined as true. So once the loading is true, we get a message sending. So that's why whenever you click here, you see sending before any result is shown. So I hope that was quick and easy for us to submit. So after submission, we understand the Laravel validates the form and send back a success or an error message as a result. So you can copy this code, or you can send a message to request for this full code, and I will easily send it to you. So watch out for our next video. I'll be showing you how to log in the inputs from the user. I will show you how to log in inputs from the user direct to your database, how to create a database, whether you are using SQL or MySQL. I will show you how to do that briefly. So thank you.